Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Lotzar, happy to be your host today, joined by my faithful volunteers, Vern Schellinger and Alki Thompson. Alki, I guess you're going to come on video hopefully soon. We'll love to see you. And so this is an open Q&A. This is what we do every other Friday in these calls. And so I'm a career coach and a recruiter. Vern is a former HR executive and currently a career coach. Alki is a recruiter and a career coach. So between the three of us, we have a lot of great perspectives, and we are delighted to support you. And we know that in particular, we are reaching out to our federal friends in the whole ecosystem of federal, nonprofit, GovCon, and all of that. So we are really happy about that. And I'll start sharing this more on this call that, and some of you already know this, that I'm launching a new initiative, new community service initiative called Higher Vision, specifically for that federal ecosystem. And we are working faithfully behind the scenes as volunteers to stand up something that will be robust enough for that community, and hopefully create some community groups for like healthcare, education, international development, all these things so that people can have a good home to network and find some job support. So that's coming as that percolates. I will be back on this call and let folks know where to access that information. So for now, here we are in a diverse group, and we are here to answer your job search questions. That's how we work this. So anybody is welcome to pop a question in. Just raise your hand or open your mic and let us know what questions on your heart and mind. And myself and Vern and Alki will do our best to address it. So who would like to kick us off? Pauletta, you're right there. Hitting the buzzer.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentation you gave yesterday. It was very helpful.
Sure.
I am not a federal, but I am or have been in all industries like government contracting because I am a veteran. So I've done government contract, I've done nonprofit, I've done for profit, I've done private, I've done association.
Great.
So I have like
The
a
whole, the whole,
plethora
the whole
of
DMV. You've been
expansion,
around
right?
town. Okay.
So my biggest job search question is, as you know, yesterday's expo was for those 50 and plus. And unfortunately, my job decided to eliminate my position at the end of January this year. So I am back in the market. Being someone who is in that 50 plus, it is very difficult to find a spot to land because even though companies aren't supposed to age discriminate, I feel like they do it a lot, especially as they're reading your resume, of how much experience you have. So, in the job search, how best can I not age date myself and make myself more marketable? Like, I have 25 plus years of experience and knowledge and skills. I even have a master's degree, but none of that seems to be helping me in this job market. And I am getting so many no's and so many of the unfortunately, we moved on with another candidate.
Right.
So, what is the best way to help someone like myself?
So that's a great question. We get it actually all the time. So you are normal in what you are sharing. In fact, I could have probably hit record, right, Vernon Alki, like just literally word for word, everything you've said. We hear it all the time. So I'm going to address it on two different levels. The actual question that you asked, but then there's a subtext to the whole thing. Okay.
Okay.
So in terms of the age discrimination, I mean, you're right. Look, human beings are human beings, right? People discriminate. There's unconscious bias, right? That's just it does happen. With that said, on that side of the coin, the age piece of it, what you can do, there are a couple things. So number one, um, only go and that I'm going to give a number. Oh, sorry. I'm going to give a number here that this is my opinion. Different coaches and recruiters have different opinions about this. My number is to only go back about 20 years. Some people say 15. I do not recommend 10, by the way. I actually said this on the call yesterday. And the reason why I do not recommend 10 is that almost makes you underqualified. You only put 10 years of experience, it makes you look kind of light. So 15 for sure, 20 I'm fine with. More than that, it gets a little bit dicey. So that's the first thing. And then if you absolutely feel the need to add additional experience, which I don't In most cases, it's not necessarily needed because employers tend to look at they tend to evaluate you based on certainly the last 5 to 10 years, right? So you don't typically need to go back. But if you really, really, really feel like there was some incredible experience you had early in your career, very notable, you could say, have the bottom say prior experience, just a little section, and then underneath company title, no dates. Okay. But you don't need to do that. You can just go back to the 20 years. So that number one helps. Number two, to make sure that you eliminate your years of graduation on if you have, higher education. So eliminate that. On your LinkedIn profile, same thing. Only go back 20 years and then eliminate the dates of graduation. So those two things, small changes, can certainly help. Okay. I'm going to address the subtext of the whole thing because actually and I'm not saying that age discrimination hasn't been a case for you. It certainly could be because I don't know your specific situation. But with that said, I think a lot of times folks of a certain age stage in career may believe that or may perceive that age discrimination was the factor, may not actually be that at all. There are so many other reasons why people are getting screened out of jobs having nothing to do with age and stage of life, okay? Or any sort of protected class, right? I mean, it could be, but for the most part, that's not really what's going on. A lot of other factors. We are in a very risk-averse environment in our country. And I don't just mean with the federal disruption, I just mean in general, employers are risk-averse. They can hire one person and they want to make the very best decision to get the most qualified person. Now, what does that mean? Qualified. Lot of variables there. Part of that has to do with the skill set that the employer believes that they need. Now, whether or not that's actually the case, that's up for grabs because there's no exact science to how employers determine what are the skills they need for the role. It's a little bit of a mushy situation, right? So the hiring manager partners with HR, they kind of think about, well, I don't know. What did we have in the past? What do we need in the future? Where's our business going? Bah, 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 bah. Well, we kind of think we sort of need skill, 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 skill. Is that the case? Great question. But anyway, they put that on paper. Now, to what extent do you personally happen to have the exact skills that they're looking for? Well, you very well might, but guess what? They have particular ways that they phrase that on the job description, which may or may not be visible on your resume. You may not happen to have used the exact keyword and phraseology that they've used. And also depending upon, I mean, I can go on and on for an hour about this, okay? So this is a fire hose. So depending on how you apply, can determine whether or not they even see any of what we just talked about. If you applied on a job board, okay, Alki, Vern, and I talk about this all the time. Those job boards, LinkedIn, Indeed, Career Builder, all of those things, employers are typically getting 1 to 200 resumes in the first 24 to 48 hours, minimum. And that's even before the federal disruption. And now I can only imagine. So for your resume to even get noticed is a big deal, okay? Then you've got to get the exact keywords. Well, let's say your resume does get noticed. Well, maybe it goes into the applicant tracking system, the ATS. Well, then the recruiter puts in certain keywords that may or may not correlate to your resume. AI sometimes gets involved, right? I get keyword. Just that alone can make it really difficult for folks to get noticed. Then there are all these other factors, right? Do you happen to have the industry or sectoral experience that they're looking for? I mean, there's just it goes, right? It's very, very, very complex. One of the things that we emphasize on this call all the time is networking. Over 80% of all jobs are hidden from the job market, meaning that over 80% of jobs are not on those job boards. Case in point, right now I'm doing 3 searches. I'm a recruiter and a coach, right? So on my recruiting side, I'm doing 3 searches. I'm doing a hidden job search, a search for folks. Most of us do that. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm going in and typing in search words. And actually, let me give you a very, very specific example of that. Okay. So right now I'm doing a very niche search It's for something called a manager of exam development. It's for a certification nonprofit. They certify pediatric nurses. It's a very niche position. Okay. So I went on LinkedIn and I knew I couldn't just post this on a job board. Like it's so niche, I wouldn't get the right candidates. So I went into LinkedIn and I did a little search, manager exam development. I'm teaching you guys this for a reason. This is also answering more, Paulette, more than what you just asked. This is also addressing how your LinkedIn needs to be framed. You want to have the kind of job title that you're looking for in the first few words of your career headline on LinkedIn, because that's the correlation to how employers and recruiters search for you. So I put in a manager of exam development in the search bar in LinkedIn, and who are the people that came up? People whose career headline said manager exam development or some version of that. So I found a bunch of people, made an outreach. Now, here's my follow on to that. So I've reached this one woman, I think her name was Nicole, and she writes me back and she says, "Oh, the job's not right for me because I'm perfectly happy with my job. However, you need to talk to my friend, Kristen." Now, Kristen immediately puts me in touch. That Nicole puts me in touch with Kristen. I'm meeting with Kristen on Monday. She looks great. Why am I telling you that? Because that was the power of networking. Kristen let her friend Nicole know she was looking for a job. So Kristen just accessed my hidden network of jobs, and now she has an interview with me on Monday. This happens all the time. You need to let your network know that you're looking. And in particular, you need to let the people know who do what you do. See, I went to Nicole, who is a manager of exam development. She referred her colleague, who is also a manager of exam development. And we recruiters are counting on that because of the birds of a feather. We assume you all flock together, and it is true for the most part. If you're in marketing, you might hang out with other marketing people. Pete, I know you're in cyber, you hang out with cyber people, so forth and so on, right? So if you network intentionally with the people who do what you do, it is very likely that they're going to hear about opportunities that are not right for them, but could be right for you. Is this making sense? Like I know I answered a lot more than what you were just asking, but you just opened up exactly what we talk about all the time. And it's not just about age discrimination, but all these other factors. You need to be networking. In fact, somebody said to me the other day, I'm going to start saying this: if you're not networking, you're not working.
Right.
Right? It's true.
Mhm.
In fact, Vern has this business that is what he does. It's called Contacts Count. It's right above his head, right? He's all about making the network work. And so I'm going to stop here. So Vern and Alki would love for you to chime in on anything I said or anything else that you'd like to share with Pauletta.
Yeah, let me give you an example of networking and how having a relationship with someone who really knows you and really can vouch for you can make all the difference in the world. Um, so I worked for a woman she's retired now, but her name was Angela Spicer. And when Angela was in Washington, D.C., she was the person to know everything about HR and everybody in the HR world. And I worked for Angela for 3 or 4 years and then left. Um, it was almost 10 years later that Angela called me and she said, "I'm doing a search for a senior vice president of human resources with ABC Company, and I'd like you to be a candidate." And I said, "Well, Angela, I was 61, 62 at the time." My first response to Angela was, "Angela, I really don't know if I have enough gas in the tank, to start this whole process all over again." But she insisted that I be a candidate. And it ended up that I was one of the two final candidates. And Angela shared this with me. So, because you ask about ageism, the CFO and the chief operating officer asked Angela, "Well, if we hire Vern, how long do you think he's going to stick around?"
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
Angela, in her wisdom, said, "I can't answer that question. Here's what I can tell you about Vern."
mhm,
And so she shared with them my experience with her and what I did and how I led and how I managed. And that convinced them to hire me. But the ageism was clearly there. Okay. The more important point, as Shira said, it's having advocates like
Right.
that
That's right.
who can overcome any kind of ageism
That's right.
because they're telling the hiring person or persons that you really are the best fit for this job for all of these reasons.
That's right.
And if they really respect that person, then they're gonna really take that into the account. And as Shira said, there's so many factors that go into the decision making. It's sometimes it's the slightest, you got really two good candidates. And as Shira said, I've been in HR and I'm saying, oh my God, who do we select? They're both so good, but you
That's
got to
right.
make a decision. You
That's
only
right.
got one
One
position.
position. Right.
So it comes down to the littlest things.
Hmm.
And and so if you've got an advocate that can kind of push you over push you past the finish line, then that's really the most important thing you
I'm
can
going to
do.
take that to another level, even, Vern. Thank you for that. This is great, right? We're just keep layering on all the advice. So you talk about the advocate, right? Okay. So in that particular case, the advocacy had to do with the age part of thing. Okay. So let me take it to another level. So I have to imagine in a diverse crowd like this that we're going to have people that are trying to make career pivots of some sort, right? You're trying to shift your what I call your lane, your profession, or shift your community, your sector. Maybe you're trying to downsize. All, lots and lots of ways that people are trying to shift. Okay, but that can't always be communicated as well as you may like on your resume. Sometimes you actually need someone to champion for you. So let me give you a real case in point. So I mentioned I'm doing a few searches. Well, one of them is for a director of IT and database administration. So it's got IT and database together, right? And a heavy dose of database work. Well, anyway, I recently met a gentleman who is in IT, right? And he says to me, we were having a conversation. He goes, "Look, Shira," he goes, "Look, I was with my organization for 28 years. And, I just naturally got promoted. And the last job that I had was a deputy executive director. Right. Been there a long time. They trusted him. Okay, fine. But he grew through IT. And then he got this deputy AD job. He goes, "But Shira." And he had to leave. They had some sort of leadership change, whatever. So he left. Anyway, he goes, "But Shira, but I don't want that kind of role anymore. I really love IT. In fact, more importantly, I love database work. Like, I'm just a database guy." In fact, he says to me, "And I've been applying for these database manager jobs and I keep getting rejected because everybody thinks I'm what? Overqualified."
Right.
Hmm. Sure, I would too if I just looked at his resume, right? Because I don't know what to do. Well, anyway, we started career coaching and I'm a resume writer. And so I helped him redo everything. And I said, "Okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take, we're going to, have your overarching dates of employment. Okay. What we're going to say is we're going to have, he had three jobs, an IT, internet manager, and then a director of IT, and then this deputy executive director." I said, "All right, we're going to list internet manager. We're going to list director of IT, which that ended in 22. Put a little asterisk right underneath that in small type, little asterisk, promoted to deputy executive director in 2022, however, still retain the director of IT. But we didn't highlight it. We didn't make a big deal of it on the resume, but we mentioned it. Okay. But what actually pops out is the IT. But more importantly, then we changed the whole resume to focus on his database work because he loves database. And so we just pulled out all of his skills and his accomplishments, and the whole thing looks very databasey. And on top, we changed his title to what he was looking for. Well, as it turns out, not only was I able to work with him, it just so happens that one of the searches that I'm doing right now is this director of IT, right, and database management. I pick up a phone and call my client and I said, "Look, I have this unusual candidate. This is the situation." I said, "What do you think?" She goes, "Great." He's interviewing with them on Monday. Now, I'm not talking about me as a recruiter. Yes, of course, we recruiters, Alki does this, Vern has done this. Like, we recruiters do this anyway, but it doesn't necessarily have to be me as a recruiter. You could have a colleague champion you. Same thing. When you're networking and people understand your situation, that you are doing a shift, a pivot of this and that. When your reputation shows up before your resume, let me say that again. When your reputation shows up before your resume and your story shows up before your resume, a lot of times people can smooth the way for you when there's that unusual position that your resume is not going to do it. Your reputation's going to do it. Your story, if somebody knows your story, they can go ahead and smooth it out a lot of times. Is this making sense? Like there's so much more than just the age thing going on. And that's why I wanted, so thank you for the springboard, right? Because I think this is hopefully helping everybody because these are normal things that we go through. So Alki, I know you've got what's to say because you are all up in this world as well. So have at it.
First, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just sitting back watching you and Vern go. You covered just about everything. It's not a lot more to say other than just echoing that, especially to her question. At a certain age and stage in the career, it gets tricky, and you have all this experience, you have these credentials, and you want to show everybody, no, 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 I'm not reducing my resume. I'm not reducing it down to little myself and all the time and the years that I've worked, but to compete in this market or to get a look or to get an intro, you definitely need an advocate if you're going to push, your full resume. You need someone who can translate that for you, or you have to translate it yourself if you're going to, whether it's submitting resumes to the job boards or just putting rebranding yourself is what we call it. You may have to rebrand yourself. One of the first questions I ask people in the job search that I coach is, what's your interview activity like? Are you hearing from anybody? Are you getting interviews? If you're getting interviews, are you going to first round, second round? Because that tells me a little bit about how you're being viewed in the market. If people are calling and your phone's ringing, the emails are coming, it means you may not need to do too much to your resume and background. But if you have a strong background and you're not getting callbacks, there is a good chance they're seeing something. And so the advocation that Vern and Shira talked about, as well as the resume tweaks and adjustment, all you're trying to do is get a meeting. Your resume, you can prove that and talk about that in the interview. You've got to get the meeting first. And so, to Shira's point, I talk to candidates a lot and help them resume wise to not necessarily downgrade, but to get you all dressed to get into the party. That's the goal, just to get into the party.
Mhm.
And so be prepared to tweak and flex your years. And then when you get in the interview and get the real conversation, then you can prove yourself further.
So all of this has been super helpful. If I can just give response to a couple of points. So when it comes to the job boards, I have been trying not to apply through them. If I see a job posting, I go directly to that company website because I do know that there are hundreds of applicants that are sending their resume to them through LinkedIn and Career Builder and all those other job searches. So I try to just go directly to the company to apply. I did revamp my LinkedIn profile so that it does highlight my executive assistant, office management, and director of operations skill set that I, have these years of experience in. Um, Recently, one thing that I do know that I'm have to redo is somebody said my resume is very wordy. So that's one thing that I'm looking at to try and make it less wordy because, I don't want a recruiter to sit up and have to read through a whole bunch of stuff on my resume. I do not have the dates of my graduation. And as far as my jobs go, another thing that I think is showing at a negative for me is unfortunately, my last two jobs were downsized um, at no fault of my own, which is why I'm no longer at those companies. So my resume starts with the company where I was there for 10 years. And then after that, it's like a year here, 2 years here, 2 years there. So I also know that recruiters are looking at that. So, how do I rectify that question of recruiters thinking I'm not going to be at this position long because of what's happened with companies that I've been at have decided to downsize my position and now I found myself unemployed again.
Yep.
And just to make a quick statement to something that Vern had said, you know, I wish companies would realize that those individuals who are 50 plus that are looking for a job through retirement and longevity. But the younger individual, and this is no punt towards that generation of people, typically are just getting into the workforce. So they may be at a job for a year or two because they're still trying to find their self. Whereas someone like myself who's more seasoned, I know where I want to be. I know what I want to do. And I'm just trying to get my foot in the door to do it.
So that's a whole conversation with human resources professionals that folks like me, Alki, and Vern are always preaching to them. So good. That's good. So let me just address two things. Actually, I want to jump back to your mentioning of applying on the company website. Yes, yes, yes. Do that and also do the job board. And by the way, I want everybody to hear what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. Okay. This is like, remember back in math, if P, then Q. Okay. Here it is. If you're going to apply on somebody's corporate website and that position is also happens to be posted on a job board, also apply on the job board. Here's why. Not every recruiting department is as organized as others. They might have a corporate website with their career page. It may not be checked all the time. Okay. So you just as a fail-safe, also apply on the job board. Okay. But I am also not suggesting that you just apply on job boards, right? For this reason, because as we know, right, 80% of jobs are gotten through networking, and because there's so much traffic, okay, on those job boards. And it is very it easily get overlooked, but you never know. It might be looked. I would just recommend to do both. Okay. That's the first thing. The other thing that I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought. What was the other thing you were mentioning?
It was about me being at
Oh, yes,
job
yes, yes. Okay.
for
So
less time,
right.
but
So
no fault of my own.
right. So here's my recommendation. And this is a little bit of an unusual suggestion, but it works. Okay. And by the way, everybody can do the following, but it's particularly helpful for people who, have the situation you're talking about. Here's what you do. If your resume is designed the way a lot of folks are, where you have the organization and your title justified left, and your dates of employment justified right, which means that there's a little white space underneath your dates. Okay. That's the sort of traditional way people do it. In that little white space, right underneath your dates. So I'm making this up. So you were at company X from 2022 to 2024, right? Right underneath that in small type, like 9 point. Okay. In parentheses, you can say, reason for leaving, colon, little tiny description. Company downsize, RIF, corporate layoff, budget cuts, position eliminated. Not a long explanation, 2 or 3 words. And what that does is it overcomes the recruiter's objections just like that. And you do that all the way down the page. And again, anybody can do this, not just you, Pauletta, right? And that right there helps, because then it's like, oh, she's not a job hopper. These things happen.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And quick point on that point. I know we have to move on, but just to add some comfort here, if it's a layoff or workforce reduction or anything like that that's beyond your control, most of us recruiters understand that. We will never look at that as your fault. So, and that's
Especially
why.
now, especially
Mhm,
now. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
And we tell candidates, please put that, because it takes away the question. Why did she leave? Why did he leave? If you put that, it answers the question, and we're like, oh, that wasn't her fault. Now let me look at her skills and her background.
That's right. And I will just say, when I said especially now, anytime we've had in this country, right, some sort of economic, right, whether it's the disruption, whether it was COVID, a different recession, we keep going through these, right, every number of years. Recruiters are very sensitive to that, and we recognize so many people get laid off, through no fault of their own. Yeah. By the way, I just wanted to hopefully all that was helpful, Paula. And Cassie, I just wanted to acknowledge your comment earlier on. You had asked if my outreach to Nicole was through LinkedIn. Yes, it was. Yes, 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 yes. In fact, many, many, many recruiters reach out through LinkedIn. Not only do they do that in sort of the normal way, but a lot of us purchase something. And this is not something that I would recommend for all of you because you don't need it. But there's a special plugin actually. It's called Sales Navigator. A lot of us recruiters use it, and it's a special database that you would never see. It's a whole unique thing, and we can do extra searches. Like we could not only just put a search in the search bar, but we can actually filter. We can filter by all kinds of things to go find people, and we will use that. We pay money for that every month to be able to message people. And so yeah, I would even though sure you might get some spam and you might get recruiters who are maybe not as legit as others, I would take a double look. If anybody ever reaches out to you on LinkedIn with a job opportunity, it's worth another look see.
Thank you. And I got to follow up kind of in the same vein, I guess. Um, Curious about because I haven't been in the job market since AI really
Mm.
it has been used everywhere, and I'm just curious how much you have to get through AI to get in the door, and if there's like tips that you have for um like putting your resume
This is
together. Like,
something.
should you be making a separate resume for every job you apply for to include like keywords from their job description?
Yeah. So it's two different things going on all at the same time, right? So the AI thing is a moving target. I don't think anybody has perfect advice on that because if they're using AI, everybody's using it differently. Okay.
Okay.
But with that said, right, it actually goes to your second question, which regardless of whether AI is in the picture, here it is. Ready? I need everybody to listen up. And I recognize you're all going to give me a big sigh when I say this. Yes, you need to customize your resume for every single job. Now, it doesn't have to be that hard because it all depends on the style that you're using. And the style that I recommend is having keywords. Okay, so first of all, a lot of people do this anyway, some sort of keyword section right up top where the keywords that you list in your competencies get tweaked, right, for the different roles. But almost as importantly, down your page, right, underneath your name and title or your the company's titles, dates, you have accomplishment stories, not job duties, accomplishment stories. Next to every accomplishment story, you have a keyword label. So that label is whatever the skill is: customer service, financial analysis, project management, board engagement, there's a million different ones. Those labels, I put them in bold. So a bold label, then your accomplishment story in plain type. Those labels and the competency box, whatever you have up top, that's what gets changed. That's what gets tailored to the job posting. And one of the ways you figure out what are the keywords you should be tailoring, you look at the job posting. And I recognize this takes time. This is not an easy thing. It's just what it is right now. You look at that job posting, and I recommend looking at three different sections of the posting. The summary section, the first few bullets of the responsibilities, and the first few bullets of the qualifications. Those to me, not that other places aren't important, but those are to me the most important areas where employers are leaning in and going, look, this is what the job's really about. And you can often find some of the key terms, and then you can go ahead and reposition your resume. But then it gets more and more complicated, right? But there's other layers to this. Then you have to see, well, what's the job? What's the focus of this role? What's the focus? Not just the keywords, the focus of it. So I'll give you an example. So in the marketing world, okay, anybody on this call who's in sort of the marketing communication space, it is a very diverse sort of field right now. It's marketing, communications, public relations, social media, digital marketing, all this stuff. So when somebody puts out a job there for something that's marketing-esque, right? A lot of employers are sort of conflating stuff in the job. They want this, they want that, they want everything. Okay? They want someone who knows how to do digital marketing and media relations and all these things. And sometimes it's a unicorn search. It's like, how are you going to find this person? But they try. But you've got to look at what the job's actually saying. What are they really leaning into? And so recently I was helping somebody vet a coaching client. I was helping him vet a position. And sure enough, this position, he's got marketing skills, but there was a media relations focus to this. And I'm like, and we looked at it, we're like, wait a second, he didn't even notice it. Didn't even notice that there were 3 bullets that related to media relations. And I'm like, A, is this something that you're qualified for? And B, is this something that you're interested in? Most job seekers quickly scan job postings. And by the way, recruiters to quickly scan resumes. That's a whole other story. But for all of you, don't just quickly scan the posting. You're looking for a digital marketing job. You're looking for a customer service job. You're looking, Paulette, for an executive assistant office manager job. And to you, they might look all the same, but they're actually not. They're not. If you really, really read it, you might notice some really important distinctions. This employer is leaning into these skills versus those skills, or this industry background, or whatever. You really, really need to analyze it. And I say that because as human beings, we tend to have this thing that psychologists call selective perception. We see what we want to see. We all do it. We all do it. We see what we want to see, and we don't see what we don't want to see often, often. And so the same thing with job postings. People will focus on what I call bullet number 5 syndrome. Oh, bullet number 5, that's my job. I'm so and then we gloss over 1, 3, 7, and 9 that are actually not our job, but we love bullet number 5. And so as you're reading this, right, you're reading it for all kinds of things, Cassie. So again, I'm springboarding off of your question,
Yeah.
not just to say, okay, keyword tweak, 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 but there's more to it. It's not just the tweakification, right? It's, is this really the right job for me? Am I really qualified? Am I really interested? What's the focus, the thrust of this role, right? As opposed to just what the title says. The title might look great, but actually, okay, so Pauletta, I'm sure you've seen your share of executive assistants roles. They're actually really half, 50% personal assistant roles. That may or may not be something you want to do. Don't know. It might be that this executive assistant role has a lot of graphic design in it because they need you to do all kinds of things with their, I don't know, right? Like their newsletter, whatever. May or may not be something that you're interested in. But a lot of times it's there. It's just that we don't see it because we see the things that we love to see. Does that make sense? So I'm just inviting all of you to have an even more rigorous lens when you look at the job posting, not just to tweak your resume, but to evaluate, is this something I want? And is this something that I am qualified for? Does that make sense? Vern and Alki, love to hear your extra thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add there, sure. I mean, you've really got to look at the job description and tailor it to exactly what the company's looking for. Again, as sure said, I was in HR, so I sat on the other side of the desk and looked at lots of resumes, and it always amazed me, people applying for jobs, and I look at the resume and I said, why did this person even apply for the job? The resume just didn't have, any of the skills or the experiences you're looking for. So you've really got to, yeah, and that's only the first step. Then you've got, as Elke was talking about earlier, you got to get to the interview.
Yep.
I mean, in fact, the only measure of success you have in this thing called the job search is getting interviews, because without the interviews, you're not going to get an offer.
Right.
And so that's what you've really got to focus on is and again, using your network and doing everything you can to get your resume right and get the interview. Because that's where that's gonna be the make or break point of whether you get hired or not.
One of the things I say sometimes is if I take yourselves, right? I want you to pretend that you're a recruiter. If I were a recruiter, would I be attracted to my resume? Think about that. Walk a mile in the recruiter's shoes. Because look, at the end of the day, all of you could be recruiters. I don't mean literally recruiter like that's your title. But if you've ever been a hiring manager in the past, maybe you'll be one in the future. You might be or have been in a position to screen resumes, right? You're a recruiter. So if I were the employer, if I were the hiring manager, if I were the recruiter, looking for someone for this job, would I be attracted to my resume? And frankly, hiring managers and recruiters have to do that all the time. Somebody's okay. So let's say and I don't know if you can raise your hand if you like here. Maybe you're not even the hiring manager. Maybe you're just on an interview panel. Has that ever happened to anyone over the years? Somebody was hiring, right, over a position, right, Cassie, and you were asked to sit on the interview panel because you're a part of the team. And what happens? Someone gives you the job description. Hey, Cassie, we're looking for a director of blah, blah, blah. And hey, Cassie, would you be on our interview panel? Cassie says, sure. Then what does Cassie do? Right before the meeting, looks at the job description, looks at the 3 resumes that, right, are going to be vetted. And you got to say, all right, how do I make this match? And that's what happens. So you need to be in a position to think to yourself very objectively. And it's hard, right? Because you're subjective about it's your resume, it's your life. You've got to take an
Mhm.
objective lens, which is why it's helpful to have other people look at your resume. Yes,
Mhm.
career coaches like me, Alki Vern, absolutely. Or friends, colleagues, not people who have a dog in the hunt, people who are really objective and can look, here's a job, here's my resume. What am I missing? What are you seeing that because when we're too close to our documents, because it's our life, right? But somebody else seeing it just very kind of objectively, clinically, might see things that we can't see. Hope that helps.
This this point is a whole seminar by itself. Um, the question Shira asked, if you've ever been a manager before, if you've ever been on an interview team, and usually when I talk to candidates too, I ask them, hey, you've been a manager, right? You've done interviews, or they tell me, and they're like, yep, I get it. To get that light bulb right there, a lot of job seekers don't have it. They're thinking, was just laid off, need a job, got to search, got to find myself something. I'm pretty good. Why won't they hire me? Why am I not getting callbacks? This whole job search thing is about how they see you from the other side
That's right.
and how they see their role
That's right.
and how it impacts the department, the team, the
That's right.
company, the bottom line,
That's
their
right.
benefits. They're extremely scared. They're extremely risk averse. They're extremely picky. And a lot of candidates don't really think about that side. They just hit apply.
That's right.
When those bullets that Shira talked about, that's where your job search starts. Is taking a look at what they're asking for. I was thinking of an example while Vern and Shira were talking. Other than if being a manager or on an interview panel, it's very similar to if you're a parent and you've ever needed a babysitter or you ever posted an ad for a babysitter or you have a sibling and growing up you were like, they had someone who liked them and you're like, oh, that girl's not good for my brother. Well, what girl is good for your brother? This is your brother. You're very protective. And so you have a list like, I want my brother to date these type of girls. I want my sister to date these type of guys and not those other types. That's how we're thinking on the other side of the table. That's how employers are thinking on the other side of the table. So they're posting just like a babysitter posting, looking for someone who can do Saturday nights from 6 to 9. Most job descriptions are very specific. Now there's a lot of, XYZ on job descriptions, which is why Shira said usually the first 3 to 5. I've done it a million times. I've posted a million jobs. We capture the main things that we
Main
want
piece.
first, and
Mhm.
then at the bottom we add
Bottom,
a
other
couple of
duties
other
as
things that
assigned.
we need.
Yeah,
But the first 3 to 5 bullets, you need to nail them. And then again, to Vern's point, no guarantee. You could, after doing all of that, you could be number 27
that's
who
right.
apply, which is why it goes back to networking. So definitely look at that job description, humble yourself, and take your resume, lay it side by side, and try to match your resume to that job description as much as you can. And then the rest is trying to get in the door.
I love this, Alki, everything you're saying. And what's interesting is that it's so difficult for most of us humans, right, to have what we call cognitive dissonance, right? And the dissonance here is that, especially if we've ever been on the hiring side, to then be on the job seeker side, it's hard for us to live in both places at once. That's a hard thing to do, but we have to do it. We have to remember, we have to walk a mile. One of the things I like to say is that in the job search process, there are two things going on at the exact same time: your career needs and their business needs. They are equally as important. And by the way, may I suggest, we're not getting into interviewing right now, but I recently been giving a lot of interview um, presentations. And one of the things I've been saying to people is that when you walk into an interview, it's very common for job seekers, especially folks in transition, to think of the employer up here and you down here. That is not the case. You're equal. You are equal. You are the other side of this equation. But that also means, right, when it comes to the resume, evaluation, yes, you have your needs. Yes, you have your interests. They're all legitimate. You're looking to shift careers or shift sectors and do lean into that skill and away from the other. Yes. And they have their own needs on the other side. They need someone who can fulfill these skills, perform these tasks, have these outcomes, have a cultural understanding, understand your business challenges, blah, blah, blah. Doing this thing here, right? Trying to get it all matched up is a challenge for them too. For them too. Employers always struggle also with the hiring process because they don't know how to make this exact match, which is why sometimes recruiters can be helpful to make all that happen. And I want to actually share a quick example. I love this story around kind of walking a mile in the other shoes, right? So many years ago, I had a client named Stuart. And Stuart, my first time knowing him was as an employer. Okay. So I did a couple of searches for him. He had at the time asked me, there were a couple of vice president searches, and he's like, Shira, and it was niche. He's like, we need people who have all these funky skills, like niche, purple squirrel unicorn. I was like, Stuart, how are you expecting me to get this person who's like doesn't exist? Like, nope, I need you to. I'm like, okay, right. So I leaned in and I did the work. Fine. Fast forward 6 months later. Stuart, he was the executive director of this organization, like the number one executive. He lost his job. It happens. So he flipped his relationship with me. He then decided to do career coaching with me. Fine. It happens all the time. So one day I'm sitting and I remember, this is one of those moments, you know how sometimes you have the moment, you know where you're sitting, you remember these moments. I was sitting in the corner bakery in Tyson's Tyson's Galleria. Okay. I remember the seat I was sitting in when this text exchange happened. And he had sent to me, as some of my clients do, he sent me a job description that he was interested in. Like, okay, because he wanted me to help him vet it. See, my objective lens. I'm like, should he be applying for this? Remember, he was an executive director, the number one executive. Okay. He sent me a job description for a director, like 2 levels down in a niche department. It was the director of education of a related nonprofit. And of course, in the job description, right? They wanted education experience and this level, right? The employer was looking for a very particular thing at that level with the skill. And I said, Stuart, did you notice that they're looking for ABC? And, you've been up here and you've been doing blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, he says, recruiters are so myopic. And I said, Stuart, how quickly we forget. And he goes, touche. I had to remind him that just months ago, he asked me to do the exact same thing and look for the unicorn. And he wasn't going to settle for anybody that wasn't that unicorn until he was the job seeker. And then he was like, oh, no, but I've got the skills and I'm interested. And the employer wanted what they wanted. And that's the way it goes because we are human beings. We're funny that way, right? We can only sit on one side at one time. Vern and Alki and I are trying to get you to walk a mile in the other person's shoes. Now, we also do that with employers. We're trying to get them to walk a mile in your shoes too. That's not this conversation, but the three of us have those conversations all the time with HR people and hiring managers. And we're like I did with my client the other day. Look, I've got this resume, right? And I know he was overqualified, but here's the story. And yes, she's being flexible because there was a me in the middle to make that happen. Okay. My point, though, is that both sides have to see each other in terms of the uniqueness of the situation. All we can do on this call is help you walk a mile in their shoes for now. and say, you've got to try to let them know how and why you are qualified so that they at least give you a chance to be interviewed. Is that all making sense? There's a lot of complexity with all of this. Alki?
I have one additional piggyback to that. So I'm glad you went there to flip it around because, rest assured, my friends, we talk to hiring managers all the time as well and talk them on ledges, off of ledges, because the way they view you as well is not always accurate. As a matter of fact, most of the hiring managers over my career, I would say probably 50-ish, 60%, they need translation of resumes. And
Right.
that's why we all present, we present candidates beyond the resume. And sure, it talks a lot about showing up before your resume. We do that as recruiters on your behalf. And it doesn't have to be headhunters like Shira and I, or it doesn't have to be us too. I would say to add to your job search, your toolbox, talk to a couple of recruiters. I know they're not all the same. I know sometimes they can be disappointing. That's why you need to level set your expectations. That you may not get a call back unless they have a hot job for you. But adding a recruiter or two or a headhunter or two to your search is great because once they have that introductory call, they can translate or we can translate to hiring managers too. I know you noticed that on their resume. Let me tell you about that. Let me tell you what they did, and let me tell you what they are and what they are not. So we can speak and advocate and translate on your behalf when they give that one look and go, oh, no, 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 she's overqualified. We're like, nope, wait. She's not overqualified. Let me explain what she did and what she didn't. And that way you can understand. I just actually placed a candidate. After only 8 days, he was referred. He looked scary and overqualified to my client until I had a conversation with the hiring manager to explain and translate and break down. And now, out of all three candidates, he's the one who walked. He was the scariest candidate to them. He turned into the one who got the offer. He starts on Monday. But that took translation
That's right.
of his background and me spending time with her. And I had already spent 5 to 6 months with her, understanding and building what she was looking for. So I'm the one who was able to go back and go, wait a minute, remember you told me you were looking for this type of person? I found him for you.
And it wasn't just a piece of paper.
No.
And that's why, yes, recruiters can do that. But even if there is no recruiter involved in the search, which frankly, a lot of job postings don't have a recruiter. They don't, look, working with a third party recruiter is not an inexpensive proposition for an employer. So a lot of employers don't work with recruiters. They'll just try to do it themselves. So as a result, if there is any way that you can get someone in your network to champion you, that is a huge, huge boon. Try, and I'm not saying it always works, right? There's always unique situations, but do what you can to try to see if you can. And one of the ways to do that is through LinkedIn. So you put in the organization into the search bar in the upper left-hand corner, hit enter, and then you'll see, right? You'll see the Acme organization, right? You put that in, and Acme should come up as one of the choices. And when you get onto that page, their LinkedIn page will come up. It'll actually say how many employees they have. Let's say 1 to 5. It'll say 1 to 500 employees. You can click on that number, and the people will come up of all the people who work there, all the LinkedIn profiles of the people who work there. And you can start looking around and saying, okay, well, who can I get to champion my candidacy? So you might look for whoever you might think is the hiring manager. You can look for the HR person. You can look for somebody in C-suite or anyone that's a second level connection. I know we don't always have second level connections, but if you can find one, that always means that you have somebody in the middle, a mutual connection. You can reach out to that mutual connection. There's a lot of things you could do. Number one, you can reach out to the mutual connection and say, hey, I noticed you're connected. You reach out to John and you say, hey, John, I noticed you're connected to Mary. Mary works at Acme Company. I recently applied for that role. Would you consider forwarding my resume to Mary for extra consideration? And then hopefully John will do that. And Mary might notice you more. Okay. There are a lot of things that you can do, but the point is that you really want to try to reach out. And by the way, you don't have to just reach out to one person. It could be multiple people, right? You could have 5 people champion your candidacy. Go for it. Be the squeaky wheel. Be the squeaky wheel. It does not just have to be one person. Trust me, by the time your resume comes through a couple, three people, they're like, okay, 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 I'll meet Margaret. Okay, great. You know, they're ready to do it. Okay. So a lot
Well,
of ways to do these things. Vern?
yeah, the other thing that should be happening at the same time is everyone in your network who knows you and knows you're looking for a job should be aware that you're applying or you're looking at ABC Company. Do
That's
they
right.
happen to know
They might
anyone
know.
in ABC Company?
That's right. You
So you
never
can,
know. You never,
yes,
never know.
yeah.
It's a small town. I mean, truly, it really is. You haven't, that's the funny thing about LinkedIn, right? Is that you think about it, you might be connected to somebody, but think about all the people that they're connected to. That works relationally too. Your next door neighbor might know somebody at the company you're applying to. You just don't know that. Truly, truly.
Yeah.
These things happen. Yeah. So many ways that people get jobs, but usually it's through some sort of networking. And even if you're doing a career pivot, I will tell you, I shared this story yesterday with somebody years ago. I was coaching a woman named Allison. She worked for Marriott. She was a corporate marketing person, and she called me, when we first started working together. She's like, "Oh, she goes, Shira, I want to work for a nonprofit." And at first, I had to explain to her, okay, so just making sure you understand what you're getting into. Nonprofits are different than for-profits, and I had to go through. But she says, no, I really want to do that. I'm like, okay. So she starts networking, and man, oh man, if she didn't come across an executive at the USO that she met through networking, she impressed this person, I mean, to no end, to the point where the USO person said to Allison, you know what? We've been looking to expand our brand, young people, blah, blah, blah. You're our girl. And they created a job for her. And that was all through networking, all through networking. Okay. So until we can, me, Vern, and Alki, we have more stories than we can shake a stick at how important networking is. You never, never know who could be your next entree.
And again, speaking to networking, and having people know who you are, what you're all about, what your skills are, what your experience is. Early in my career, I actually landed what at the time was my dream job because someone who knew me well and knew what I was looking for called me and she said, "Are you still interested in this career management position?" I said, "Absolutely." She said, "Well, this company's hiring right now." And she said, "I can make a recommendation for you." And again, that is an example of the hidden job market because that job was not posted anywhere.
Right.
Without that person in my network telling me that that job was available,
Right.
I would have never known about that opportunity. And I interviewed for the job and I landed the job. And so I just can't emphasize enough having as many people in your network that know you, like you, trust you, can talk about your skills. That's just so important to the whole not only job search but managing your career.
Look, it happened to me again yesterday. I mean, seriously, we could spend all day long on this. Happened yesterday. That director of IT search I mentioned that I'm doing. Well, I do stakeholder interviews. So I talk to the manager, I talk to other people. Well, I ended up talking yesterday to the vendor that this organization works with. They have an IT vendor that they work with. I was talking to this woman, and we're just having our conversation. And then all of a sudden it occurs to me that this woman, this vendor, works for an organization, something called an MSP, a managed service provider. It's a type of IT company. And it suddenly occurred to me, wait a second. Several weeks ago, I was working with a coaching client who comes from an MSP background. I said, oh my gosh. I said to her, I'm like, do you guys have any openings? I said, I've got this person I've been working with who I think could be a great fit. And she goes, oh, look at our website, right? And sure enough, there was a position. And I said to her, hey, if he applies, can I send his resume to you for you to get noticed by the recruiter? She says, absolutely. And this all happened last night. He went, he applied, he let me know. I wrote her. And right now, as we speak, his resume is getting socialized to the recruiter when otherwise it could have just gotten lost in the sauce. But that was just me just being a person, just like, wait, connect the dots. Do you all remember, I don't know if you ever played this game when you were a little kid called Concentration? We were all 5 years old. Okay, I don't remember if you've ever did this, but there were all these little cards. Okay, they were all face down, and you open up one card, and it's a strawberry. Turn over the card, and it's a strawberry. And then you're supposed to remember that the strawberry was the first position in the upper left-hand corner. You turn it over, And then 3 levels down, there's another strawberry. And you're supposed to remember where the first strawberry was and you make the match, right? It's that matching thing. That's part of our job as connectors. So that's another thing you can be doing, not just having people do this for you, but you can be doing this for other people. You can be great referral sources for other people in your network as you're doing your job search. You want people, yes, to be thinking of you, like I happen to be thinking of this coaching client. You can be doing that for other people. As you're out and about, you're hearing about all kinds of opportunities. Remember, oh, wait a second, didn't I just talk to somebody and they were, oh, wait, do the connection. You can reach out and be a help to somebody else. This is all about networking. It's all about people helping people, making connections that otherwise connections could never be made. Is this helpful? Hope so. All right, we're kind of wrapping up time here. So anyone else have another question, anything or any other little deep dive that we can go into? All right. One thing that I usually forget to mention to folks is that on my website, I have recordings of the of all of these talks. So we've been doing this Higher Moment Mastermind, if you could believe, since August of 2020, right in the beginning of the pandemic. And on this page of my website, give me a second here. You can go there. And we used to do these actually every week for many years. And then last February, we started going to every other week. But they're full recordings. And so you can have at it, right? Just listen to your heart's content and you'll hear all kinds of interesting topics that and different things even than we've talked about today. And also on that, also on my website, I'm going to give you another link. And that is a whole bunch of videos for job seeker videos. Here you go. That I've done over the years on different topics on branding and interviewing and networking and such like that. Okay. And for those of you who joined us a little bit late on the call, I was mentioning early on that there's another community service program that I'm starting called Higher Vision. And it's specifically targeted toward the federally disrupted folks. So federal employees, NGOs, government contractors, and we've got a team of volunteers who are working faithfully behind the scenes to stand something up. We are looking for some sort of weekly group that are it's going to be one weekly group, but then there's going to be a whole bunch of community groups like Higher Vision Healthcare, Higher Vision Education, that kind of thing, where people can network right within their communities to help each other land work. So I will be continually keeping folks posted on this call. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and wrap up, and I'll be formally stopping the official part of this call. But for anybody who would like to stay on now for a short prayer call, I'll be leading folks in prayer for those of you who would like to join me for that. Okay, so we're going to stop recording.